I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist here in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. I'm in my studio today. I think we'll talk a little bit about a couple of the processes that many of you have asked about, and we'll just review some of the things that we can do with the saran wrap to get the texture. And then I thought it would be really fun to combine the other droplet texture for creating trees and things. So we'll put two of them together and we'll get the texture and the beautiful organic trees in the background. So this is one that I have done in the past, just to give you an example. I think we'll sort of follow along with this general theme. It may not look exactly like this when we're done, but that's the beauty of art, right? So I'm going to start, as always, with wetting my palette. Lots and lots of water just to get those pigments woken up and ready to go. As it dries, I'll continue to add more water. I love to have those pigments just really thick and ready to apply for the style of painting that I do. I'm going to be using Arches cold press paper again today, cold press rough, and a 300 GSM, grams per square meter, or 140 pound, which is pretty standard. There is a 300 pound, 620 GSM, I believe it's called, that's beautiful to work with too. It's almost like a cardboard. But today we're going to use the 140 pound Arches, one of my favorite brands. And I will just quickly tape this piece down. I've taken it off the pad. If you have a block where the paper is already secured along the edges, that's great. It helps to keep it from warping. I don't pre-wet my paper, as many artists do. For me, most of what I do is geared towards a pretty quick and easy process. I don't always have a lot of time to spend in my studio, and so tricks to make it simpler are always good for me. So Coroplast is what I'm using here. I love that it's corrugated, so that means there are lines on the plastic that help me line things up and keep the paper straight. And I'm just going to tape the edges down. And again, taping it straight is easy to do with the lines in the Coroplast as well. You don't have to tape it on all sides. I like to, because I like to see that it's, I'll start at this side. I like to see that there's an edge and a border to what I'm doing. And there we have it. I will just double check that I have the proper size for the matting that I might be using, and that does work. I can see that I've got lots of room for a mat to sit on top of my design when I'm done. So this piece is, let me just double check, it is 9 by 12. So if we're going to follow on that similar design, we will use the plastic wrap technique, and I'm going to create some land shapes. I'm going to keep in mind that I don't really want things to sort of converge in the middle. I want things to sort of be offside, off-centered. The rule of thirds, to some extent, can apply to all of these processes. So I'm going to use a hake, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, H-A-K-E. This is a Ron Ranson brand. And I love that they've just got so much capability when it comes to holding water. It's also great for stippling, and we'll do that in another video as well. So some water on my page. I'm going to sort of keep in mind that I want some rocks on the bottom, some landmass of some sort. And I'm going to put my sort of centered, where it comes together, off to the side. And just lots of nice water on there. In the example picture, I have some Mayan dark blue. Oops, this is not Mayan dark blue. That was not a good thing. but that's okay. That was in Danthron blue. I'm going to add some Mayan dark blue in to make that a little bit darker. And that in Danthron will work fine in there too. You can use any color really. And it will just add a nice bit of lightness. So I'm just dabbing in some nice juicy color into the wet part. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more water. The other color I have in that example is an undersea green. And again, my paints have just soaked up so much of that moisture that I'm just going to wet it again. So I'm going to take my undersea green and just dab in I keep going into the blue. The light is shining on my palette. I can't see what colors I'm grabbing. And I'm not going to worry about a little bit of white space. Maybe that will look like snow in the end. But essentially I have my landmass ready to go. I will take some saran wrap, plastic wrap, and oops. Get it so that I've got some texture happening in my landfall. And I'm just going to set this aside. We'll get lots of nice light texture and shapes and shards of things happening in those rocks. And that is that. We're going to let this dry to a point where I can actually take the saran wrap off with and have the paint not continue to move. And I'm just going to take something not too heavy, but just something that will hold that saran wrap down and set it aside for a few moments. We'll be back when that's dry to continue with our organic trees with the droplets. Okay. So we're ready to take the plastic wrap off of our piece and see where we ended up with things. I love the almost glacial look of the colors that came through. So the next step in this process is going to be incorporating a bit of that spatter technique, water droplet technique we talked about a few videos back. So this is my landmass. I now want to create some interesting trees and things happening in the background. So I'm going to take I could use anything to cover that. When I'm spattering with the water droplets, I don't want to be reactivating anything or leaving drops to make blossoms on my piece underneath that has these beautiful organic shapes in them. Now it's still wet, it's still damp because we've put a fair bit of pigment and water on the page to begin with, but it's dry enough now that we can proceed with the other portion of the painting. I just don't want to get more moisture on that, so I'm going to just cover that. This is the spray bottle that I like to use when I'm creating my vignettes. If I want to have an organic looking tree or something, I will use this one. The facial mister bottle that I use for wetting my palette provides that continuous mist, which is going to give me too much moisture on the surface of this. It's great for on here, and I like to keep my palette moist at all times. This is lovely because it only has one setting, and it's if I pull the trigger slowly, the water droplets will just arch out and randomly fall on the page. You can get them where this little nozzle part is adjustable, which is great too. So here's the one I've been using forever, And I'm going to go back and take a look. So I don't want anything dead center. There's kind of a bit of a light spot here that's kind of off of center a bit. I can play on that a little bit perhaps as we go along. But I want to add some trees and things. So I probably will bring my spatter down to about this point and then maybe a little bit over here. So I'll leave an empty spot and I'll put something interesting where these little bits are. So that's the plan. There really doesn't have to be a plan, but so I'm just going to spatter, spritz, just some droplets across the page. I don't want it saturated. I just want droplets there for my pigment to settle into and follow. I'm going to be using pretty much exclusively for this part of this painting my synthetic goat hair blend brush from Lebens and Brushes. It's set into a bamboo cane handle. The minute it arrived in my door several years ago and I opened it, I was amazed. It felt like it was made for my hand. I absolutely adore it. It's going to allow me enough flexibility that I can create long lines if I want to. It can be scumbled open and I can use it for texture, and I can also use the side of the brush. It holds a ton of water and pigment. So I will, because my palette is pretty wet, the pigments are pretty wet, I don't need my brush dripping wet. I just need to pick up some nice rich pigment, and because I've got in the base part here, we've got Mayan dark blue, we've got Undersea green. I'm going to start with those two colors. So my Mayan dark blue, I love to start with that when I'm doing these trees because when it dries lighter and it gives a sort of a shadowy, distant effect. So I'm going to start, I see there's a drop of something that was already on the page. So I'm going to start that as my starting point, and I'm just going to touch my brush down in a line as a tree trunk would go down to my landfall. And that's kind of a funky looking tree. I kind of like how that's taking place. I'm just going to leave that to dry, and then we'll move here and put something at just a different lower level. And if I sit back, I can see where some of the water droplets are, and I can try to hook them up a little bit. This is going to be a pretty sparse tree. Maybe there is a jack pine that look a little sparse. I'm not sure, but that's what I love about these shapes that emerge from this process. Now this has sort of gone off on a little bit of a tangent, so I'm going to play on that by just adding another tree line, trunk line. So let's bring that one right up to the top because I can see some beautiful lines up there. Okay. I'm going to take this off now because I don't have to protect my lower piece, and I can see where the base of it is. So I'm going to continue on with my tree trunks. Rich, deep Mayan blue, and we'll throw a few more in. Oops. And if I sit back, like I say, I can see where some of those drops are sitting, and I can try to connect them. Trusty paper towel, I see there's quite a puddle happening there, and I'm not sure I want that there. I'm just going to take it out because I can, right? So I'm going to continue on with these crazy trees. lay my few nice dark blue ones in to start with. And I just want to put a bit more deeper pigment into some of these. And you can see how the water just pulls it and moves it along. And that looks like maybe we could throw another crazy tree in there as well. So that's it for my blue trees. I'm going to go in now, but as I said, we used Undersea green in the bottom area there. So I'm going to put some green. Oh, that was just about a mess. Too much water on my brush. The water on the page will suffice generally, as long as I've got a good load of pigment. Because I keep my palette wet, I really only have to touch and dip the tip of my brush in. So I'm going to put some green in here and let that work its magic in behind. And maybe we'll put another, if I can see some droplets. Don't see many droplets on this side, but I see a bit there that maybe I could add some green to. Okay. And I see quite a blob there. I'm going to take that out and just extend a green tree right through that portion as well. Okay, and then we'll put a few green trees on this side. There's a droplet there. The droplets are starting to dry. And when that happens, if you spray it, you're going to make a big puddle in everything that's there. So rather than spray, when the droplets are drying, I will just take fresh, clean water on my brush and make my own droplets. Okay. And then I can go in and add the color. Now, because these droplets are going to stay wet for a while, you don't really want to be tipping your page around too much if you can help it. We'll just add a bit more just to fill in a tiny bit of your trees in the background here. You'll notice with this one I didn't do a sky either. I kind of like that white stark background, but if you do decide you want to put some sky in there, you certainly can. And I'll show you that in a second here as well. We'll just put some random bits of water on there and let our trees work their way around. So I mentioned the side of my brush. I will go in now and just slide some of that color up a little bit, so we've got some underbrush happening on these trees. This is, you can see it's probably a pretty stark landscape, typical of some of our northern climes, possibly. If we wanted to add other colors, we certainly can. A little bit of accent here and there is always pretty. Up to you to decide what colors you want to put in. But essentially that is how you would put your two different styles together. going to give a little more on the side of the brush just to bring up some of that undergrowth texture. And then maybe just a bit of blue in there as well, just to enhance some of those shadows. And if you wanted to add a sky, I just would go in with the side of my brush, give a bit of moisture in the areas that are dry, and I'm not going to touch the trees on the sides. I don't want the sky bleeding into them at all. And a simple sky. Very simple. Because this brush is nice and fine, I can get fairly close to some of those trees if I want to extend that sky a little bit further one way or another. You can add a little bit on the sides just to bring it together a little bit. And I'm just going to soften that right into that beautiful little opening there. I kind of like that that's a bit of a rainy looking cloud. And just an indication on the sides to know that it's sort of going to come together. And I'm going to go in with my damp paper towel again and just soften some of those edges a little bit. Make some cloudy effects. I try to keep my edges all rather uneven. If you get too many straight or curved lines, it sort of detracts from the design of your painting. And if there's areas where it does come to a bit of a harsh edge, take your damp brush and just feather it around. And it's up to you how close you bring it to your trees. I see here this little piece that we talked about earlier, and I should have made that into something, so we're going to do that right now. We're going to make it into some chunky little trees, maybe. And then bring that down. Make some rock edges on here. And then maybe we have a little glacial stream that's sort of trickling out into the rocks. And one more tiny bit of dark green just for a bit more definition in here. Allow it to flow through. And that's all you need to do. You can soften this with water just to bring those colors down into those designs. It will still keep your patterns looking like they needed to be there. And just to smooth off some smoother, or roughen up some smoother edges. And that's about as much as I would do with that. I think I like the look of the starkness of the trees against the that glacial-looking landscape. So there is a quick example of plastic wrap on watercolor, spatter effect to pull up some trees, whatever colors you use. I'd like to keep it simple, so I used two colors. Actually, one little bit of indanthrone blue got stuck in in the corner here, and that's okay. I could also add that up into the other corner just to balance it if I wanted to, but I think I'm good with this. So if you try it, let me know. Thanks, accomplices, for joining me today. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe and hit notifications, and you'll be able to see when I'm coming back. Visit my channel, Artist Lynda Norman, or my website, bandrystudio.com. That's BANDRAOI studio.com. Thanks again.